Hello and welcome to this interview today. Now today I am delighted to be joined by Zana. Zana started working with me a couple of years ago to write her very first book. I have it here. I'm sure she's got some copies behind her, Bold Reinvented. Now Zana is an executive coach, she's a leader, she's a trainer, and she's got over 15 years experiences of working with organisations across the world. She lives in Zagreb in Croatia, and I know for a fact recently she's been traveling all over the world delivering her workshops, her events, and coaching people virtually from her office as well. Her job really is to help leaders to be bolder, to be braver, and to make a bigger difference in the world and to be game changers. So welcome to the interview, Zana, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, we've known each other for a couple of years, and I'd like to find out why you wrote your first book. What inspired you to get the ideas out of your head and get them down onto paper?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because I actually just was thinking the other day, and I even posted about it. What was that? When was that crucial moment when I decided, that's it, I'm going to write my book? Because I've always wanted to write a book. I always felt there's a book in me, and you know that typical inner talk, I am going to do it one day, I'll do it when, whatever, when my business is fully set up, when I have more time, when my child is, grown up, whatever we say to ourselves. And then there was something that I really wanted. I wanted to become part of one of the organizations that delivers transformational training all over the world. And I applied for the auditions, and I thought, okay, if I don't make it to the final round, I at least make it to, to one or two rounds along the process. And it's going to be a lot of learning and everything. And then also, when I get more experience, that's going to enrich a lot of my ideas, including my idea of writing a book and everything. And then I actually totally failed in those auditions. I didn't even make it to the next round. And I clearly remember the moment that day that I said, that's it, I'm writing my book. So what's the message behind this? Is that I've always felt there's a leadership book in me that I want to write. And I'm not good enough to do it now. I'm not experienced enough to do it yet. I still need to learn something to be able to do that. And that's really nonsense. Because if you feel that you've got book inside of yourself, the next step you need to do is to find the team to support you to get that book out of yourself and on the paper. And you can do it. You're experienced enough. You have enough of knowledge. If there is a desire and passion in you to do it, you've got everything you need. That was my learning.
How did you turn your self-talk around from being, it's not the right time, I'll do it when, to actually going, you know what, I can do it? What happened? What was the transition that turned it around for you?
Yeah. So in that moment when I realized something is, again, a failure for me, but it felt as a failure in that moment. But already being trained enough to be able to recognize, wait a second, failure is a signal that something else wants to happen. And right now I'm translating it into my book wants to happen. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. And I would love to tell you that that was it. That was the moment that I sorted out my inner critic, and that was it. But that's not true, because this inner talk comes back. Right. The key is to not stop. So you move along. You've got good people around you that are supporting you in doing your good work, and they will help you also to deal with your inner critic. And I remember clearly one of the moments when you and I worked together, and I kind of felt, oh my God, I'm writing about bold leadership now. Who am I to write about that? Right? And I clearly remember that you told me, just take a break and just ponder on one question. Why are you the authority to write about this? And just saying with yourself, reflecting on that, I found my answers, and it helped me deal with the inner critic at that moment and move on.
Apart from the inner critic, were there any other challenges that got in your way when you were writing the book, when you were on the journey?
Yeah, absolutely. There were some very tangible challenges, such as time. Because it's like, I feel a little bit like, like you're giving birth to a book. It's just like giving birth to a child. It's never really the right time. Either you're too young or you're too old, or you've just started your career, or, there's always something. So the same thing was for me with the book. I thought, okay, now I'm going to do it. And then the reality hits it. You've got a lot of work. You need to continue, developing your business. You need to generate some cash to just, be able to also invest and finance everything that you want for yourself. You've got family, you've got other people that need you, and there's only 24 hours within a day. So in my experience, I needed to make some real commitments, and I needed to make some choices that did not feel always comfortable. And when I say that, I can be very practical in that. So I needed to work on weekends. I needed many times to wake up at 5 a.m. and start doing my work before 7:30, before family wakes up. I needed to do later in the evening. So I was actually selecting what suited me best. I'm a morning person, not really a late evening person. I like my weekends, but at the same time, I know I've got the best peace during weekends if I separate and isolate myself from my family. So I really need to make some of those tough choices to make it happen.
Yeah. So how did we worked together one-to-one for a period of time, didn't we, to get your book done? How did that help you and also working with my team to get it published as well? How did that help you to get your book out there and make it hopefully as easy as possible?
Yeah. So I'm really not exaggerating when I'm saying that without you, I wouldn't have made it. I mean, honestly, because there's one thing having an idea, I want to write this book. And then there's another thing, making the time for it. And then there's another thing, having a kind of a double pair of eyes and ears, a person who's going to read that and say, hey, wait a second, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. What were you trying to achieve here? Oh, yeah, this is great. Just, go on that path. And so there's a mirror there, which was you, really telling me, holding me accountable, acknowledging me, challenging me, and really walking beside me while I was making it happen. Without that, I would have probably given up so many times, or it would have lasted for a very, very, very long time.
But you did it. Your book was out September 2021. Yeah. And I know we started talking about this before I pressed the record button. What have been your biggest successes since then? And I know they've been huge, haven't they? Well, actually, not just then. Before. I'm going to rewind slightly here. When you were writing the book, you created an ebook off the back of the research that you did for the book. That gave you some amazing opportunities. So overall, what have been your biggest successes, whether it's from that or even since it's been published?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I've really experienced successes from the moment I've decided to write the book. So it's not like, I thought before, so you write the book, you publish the book, and that's when it all starts. And that's another thing that I've learned with you. No, it starts with your decision to write it, because from that moment, you start doing the marketing for your book. And even though I don't like the word marketing, because it just kind of doesn't sound authentic for me, but when I say marketing, I mean you start speaking about what is it that you believe in, and what is it that you're going to write about in your book. What are those messages that you're conveying in your most authentic way? And I started to do that in the middle of writing the book, as you said, by publishing an ebook, by starting to create my community, by starting to speaking about the topics, and in the same way testing those topics that I thought, oh, this should go into my book. So why don't I just test how this lands for people and how it lands for me when I start speaking about that? And I actually started getting engagements, a lot of engagements to speak, to go and work globally. And then obviously once I've published my book, this just kind of exploded. I mean, quite honestly, exploded, with lots of requirements for speaking, for delivering the programs based on my book, based on everything that I speak about in my book. It really, really exploded.
So what have you been up to? Where have you been? I know you've been all over the world, haven't you, with it?
Yes. So I'm also noticing that in my case, things are going a little bit different, and I guess that's. I mean, I guess that's true for everyone. We kind of see from the outside, we kind of see one story, but when we're in the middle of it, when we are the protagonists in that story, then we feel that it goes a little bit different. So I've written the book, and I had in my mind I'm going to create a program based on this book. But what this book really brought for me is a lot of speaking gigs rather than programs. But then there is a part of my book, my current book, published book, that is almost the doorway into my second book. And I kind of started creating the program based on what I'm going to be writing about next.
Yeah.
And then I started getting requirements. Oh, we want this program, not just as a public program. We want it in-house. And now I'm feeling that I am creating the program that's going to generate my second book, rather than, you know, having created a book that generated my first program. But in my case, you can say that one book leads to another.
Absolutely. It has to, doesn't it? If you don't do that, it's going to be disjointed, and it's about embodying your message, isn't it? It's about, as you say, speaking about it. It's about sharing your message, and whether you're on social media, whether you're speaking or in a networking event or whatever, it's about consistently showing up, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love what you're saying. It's about embodying your message, because I really felt that's what happened for me. And I, you know, and I've created this kind of belief now around this whole process of writing a book. So if you write a book from the perspective of this is what I really believe in, this is the work that I'm really passionate about, I feel it's almost inevitable that it's going to take you to the second book and the third book and the fourth book, because you're basically fine-tuning your message. You're uncovering deeper layers. There's something more that you want to bring to your audience. So I guess that you can say it's kind of contagious. When you write the first book, it's contagious. It's inviting you to go and write the next one. And then you have to deal with time and with all those tangible things. But that's less important. That's less important than the passion and then your purpose and then what you really want to leave as your legacy, I'd say.
Yeah, and I know you've already brought in a new team member, and you're looking at increasing your team even further, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I brought in a full-time team member to help me with everything. I'm bringing in associate coaches at this moment. So writing my book helped me expand my business. And it is painful at a certain point, right? Because I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning. We're waiting until things happen, until things are perfect, so that we can start something that we want. And it doesn't really happen that way. It really happens in parallel. You need to be, I was creating my book, and at the same time, I was actually creating my bigger business. And now I'm seeing the rewards of that, and I'm hoping it's going to grow bigger and bigger.
Yeah. So there's been a huge return on your investment of time, energy, and everything else that you've put into it.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I know you've been traveling Lisbon. Where else have you been to recently?
Well, Lisbon, Paris, here in the region, Montenegro. So, and a lot of work online with Australia, with Singapore, with the US. So lots of work.
We started, didn't we, just before the first lockdown? Well, no, we started just after the first lockdown. I remember having a conversation just before the world went to, less said about that, the better.
Yes.
What advice would you give people who are watching this interview today and going, I'm thinking about writing, but I'm not sure. Is it the right time? What advice would you give people thinking about writing a book, or even people who have started, who just want to be inspired to keep going?
So I'd always say reconnect to yourself and to your real reason why you want to write this book. What is it that you're really passionate about? What's really that message that it's yours, that needs to come out because you feel that it needs to come out? And everything else will fall into place. Obviously, you'll have to make some choices. When it comes to your true commitment, you'll have to make some choices around time. You'll have to make some choices around your own boundaries for other people, for yourself. So it's not an easy thing, meaning it won't happen if you don't do the work. But if you start from those elements, you're very likely to be kind of put off. I don't have time now. I don't have money. I'm just not in a position. I'd say don't look at that as a priority. Really look at your passion. If this is what you want, if you've got a message and you feel that message needs to come out, like that quote, the commitment, the universe will appreciate that, and it will arrange things for you to happen.
And you just have to be uncomfortable sometimes, don't you? And just do things. Certainly from my own experiences, you just have to, if it was easy and it was comfortable, nobody would do it, would it? We have to be in that stretch zone, and sometimes in that panic zone, to actually get things done and to be able to step up.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe at this point, we can also mention something that you and I spoke about so many times. So at the very end of this book writing process, my son went through a very life-threatening surgery. So there was something in my private arena that was definitely requiring my time and requiring my commitment and requiring my energy. And again, it did fit into the plan. I needed to extend some of the things, obviously, because some of the things were more important. But, a kind of replanning or redoing your plan is something that's normal, as long as you start and as long as you commit it to really complete it.
Any plan is work in progress, isn't it? Any plan can be adjusted. The worst thing that happens is when the plan goes out the window.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I think about that, I think about a message that I've learned from you. You cannot edit a blank page, right? So something needs to go there, right? You cannot change a plan that's non-existent. So you need to have a plan. You need to start writing. And then if the editing is required, if changes are required, that's something that you do along the way. Feeling a little bit uncomfortable or a lot, that's part of the process.
And obviously now you've launched you're launching your Game Changers Academy, and you're writing book number 2 with me.
Yes, absolutely. So it's going to be a book about game changers. And as I am writing it right now, or still doing the research around it, it feels super uncomfortable, because there are moments when, I don't have clarity, and I disconnect from my purpose, then I need to come back, I need to get that clarity again. And that would not be possible for me without having a team, in this case, meaning you. So without holding me accountable, without just really asking me questions to help me reconnect to why I'm doing this and what's the impact that I want to create with this. It's a little bit like coaching in my profession, like the executive coaching. We know lots of things, and yet we need that mirror. We need that double pair of eyes and ears to see us, to listen to us, to reflect back what we're saying, and to really help us stay on track and do what we chosen to create out there.
Yeah, it's definitely that reminder of why we're doing it, and also the vision of what it's going to give us and give other people. So stepping into that vision, that future self, I think can be really powerful as well, not just the present self, because then that reconnects with the kind of the passion, the purpose, the kind of that, just the reason why.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because this most uncomfortable space is when you're almost kind of with one foot in your old self and another foot in your future self, and you kind of feel really stretched there. And I can say that I've had those moments so many times in the process of writing a book. And yes, it all falls into place and it all makes sense once you have that book, once you're able to hold it. And also something that I need to share. It's at moments I'm laughing at myself. Sometimes I take my own book and I go back and I read it and I'm thinking, oh, I'm inspired by my own book. Because in the middle of doing all of that, you also become a little bit, more down to earth. What do I need to do? Who do I need to call? What's the time that I've got available? How do I need to market it? And it's always good to go back to your own messages, to that passion that you had at the very beginning, to that importance to send out a certain topic, a certain message to the world. It's good to digest again and again yourself, because it can inspire you as well.
Absolutely. And are you used to actually being, now you've been a published author for 9 months, you're used to going around saying, hey, I'm the author of Bold Reinvented? Has that become second nature now?
Yes, now I feel comfortable with that. I have to say there were moments at the very beginning when I was not comfortable with that. And somebody would say from the audience, and we've seen that you've written a book. And I said, oh, yes. And what happened to me on one of the very important speaking gigs is that I was recommending so many books. And then there was a slide with my own book. And I even made a joke in that moment saying, oops, I have not mentioned my own book so far. Well, that says something about me. And the audience went laughing in that moment. But that was just the process of me kind of integrating this new identity. And now I have to
really good point.
and now I have to start integrating the next one of somebody who's here to lead the expanding business and also write her second book.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got any final tips or advice that you'd like to leave people with today, Zana, before I obviously invite you to tell people how they can get a copy of your book?
Yeah. If you feel that desire to go and write your book, don't think twice. Just go and do it. Because if you feel it's needed for you to put it out there, then most certainly it's needed to be out there. And people need to hear that message. Don't think twice. Don't be put off by life's reality that can get in the way, because passion and commitment always win over that life's reality.
It just reminded me of something, Zana, as well, is some people don't write the book because they feel that other people have written it already. And they worry that it's a crowded market. And
yeah. And the fact is that your book is probably going to be one of the million other books out there, and it's going to be very unique because you've written it.
Absolutely.
So we can have one single message spoken out by 10 people, and the impact will be different because we bring ourselves. And that's why the passion is so important, because if you don't have that passion, then you're just writing somebody else's book. So tap into your passion, and it's going to be your book, even though it can be a message that is out there and it's been out there for 1 million times. It's going to be like we're hearing it for the first time because it's yours.
Thank you for your inspiration. So how can people find out more about you, Zana? I've got a link to your book, which I'll pop on the bottom. But how can people find out more about you and connect with you, and maybe even engage you, if they're ready to step into their bold leadership?
So I'm very present on LinkedIn. That's kind of my social network. So if you want to engage with me, that would be the best way to reach out. Or you can visit my website, www.boldleadership-culture.com, and you can find out more about me. You can download some free resources, get on my mailing list so that you receive information regularly. And that's it. And you can go and get my book, and you have some of the contact details there. And I would love to hear the feedback and engage in conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Karen.